Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's get an introduction to religion. First of all, before we get into the concept of religion, let's have a couple of understandings while we're studying religion. One, there needs to be no value judgments. Um, there is no that this is good or this is bad or better or worse. We're here to look at things from different perspectives and to essentially learn. And so there should be no judging like one religion being better than another. It really doesn't serve any purpose. Even if you do seem like you do feel that way, you might feel that way about even things that aren't involved in religion, but you need to know how do you put that to the side and just kind of open up and say, okay, I'm learning about this. It doesn't mean you have to like it or believe it or anything like that. But what we're doing is trying to understand why some people think like they do when they deal with scarcity. Okay. So what we want to focus on is the history of the people that we're going to be talking about in terms of religion and the overall beliefs of those religious ideals. Okay. So, what is religion? Essentially, religion is an organized system of beliefs, ceremonies, practices, and worship that usually centers on one or more gods. And it exists to try to answer a lot of the questions that are bigger and deeper about the existence of us. Um, Religion often offers guidance, um, a a sense of community of belonging. It tries to deal with questions about the origin of life or the origin of the universe. It's often used to influence culture and politics as well. There's a lot about culture and politics that is involved in religion. And one of the key parts of religion is it establishes a moral foundation. And morality is just the idea that something is right or wrong. And what is right or wrong is often seen through a religious lens. Now, because you practice a religion does not necessarily mean you are committed to that religion. We have different levels of commitment that do exist. Well, all the way from the uncommitted kind of people to the devout Orthodox people. So, if we were looking at the levels of commitment, uncommitted people like they hang out at church on occasion, maybe when it's kind of fun or they want to hang out with their friends. They'll call themselves Christian, but may not know a whole lot about Christianity as a religion. They may believe in God, but they don't really practice that belief. Congregational, or you actually attend maybe a service regularly, uh, that you are part of a small community of people that are more committed. If you're a disciple of a religion, you have actually a much deeper commitment to that religious faith. You're not just attending services, you're actually actively studying that religion and starting to actually spread the word to others about your faith and about the, the religion. And then, of course, somebody who is very devout or orthodox are much more they're living their life entirely for God's will. Everything they do is for God's will, and they lived and exist to do exactly that. So people are at different levels of religious commitment. Back in antiquity, when we're going before, before Christ, BC, you would have polytheistic religions. And polytheism is simply the idea that you have multiple gods, many gods, like Egyptian. The Egyptians had a bunch of different types of gods that would all represent different things. And that's because people didn't have a lot of understanding about what was going on in the order of the natural world. So the old ancient Egyptians and Sumerians and Babylonians, they would have a polytheistic, polytheism faith, many gods. What we're going to be looking at is more monotheism, where you have one God. And this is common in Western cultures and in the United States, where you have Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They all worship the same singular God, uh, whether it's Yahweh, which is Jewish, God, which is Christian, or Allah, if you are Muslim. It is a monotheistic religion, and there's a lot of commonalities, as we'll see with them. Okay, the main religions around the world, of which there are Christianity, which is monotheistic. Buddhism is non-theistic. It's not about worshiping a god; it's about enlightenment. Judaism is a monotheistic religion. Hinduism is a polytheistic religion. Islam is monotheistic. We're going to be dealing with Islam, Judaism, and Christianity to start in this section. Around the world, There are more Christians than any other religion. However, the fastest growing faith in the world is Islam. So Muslims are growing, but understand that when we talk about overall the idea of religion, a vast majority of the world practices some kind of faith, whether those are Muslims, Christians, and Hindus. About a quarter of the world is religiously unaffiliated, meaning they don't really practice a faith. It doesn't mean they're not necessarily spiritual somehow, but they don't have like an organized faith that they necessarily follow. And what we do know about religion is that the poorer the country, the more likely there's going to be a lot of faith. So this is on this vertical axis right here. It's the country or territory affiliated with any religion, like the how what percentage of the territory. And then down here on this is health, wealth, and education. This is the Human Development Index. The more farther to the right, the more healthy, wealthy, and well-educated a country is. What we find is poorer countries, countries that are less well off, are way more likely to have a larger population that is religious. Countries that are better off, that are more healthy, more wealthy, and more educated, tend to have less overall people as part of a religious faith. Down here in the corner, we have Vietnam and China. Those are both communist countries. And in communist countries, religion is often totally forbidden, but definitely like scrutinized by the government and criticized as being anti-communist, which if you're in a communist party state, nothing can be above the party. And of course, with religious faith, you have God above all else. So you will see that, like a country like China, which has so few people that are actively faithful, is because they are really not allowed to. Okay, so let's get a couple of elements of religion, regardless of faith. These are elements that we're going to be looking at. Number one, and probably one of the most important one, is the elements of stories. Every religion has some kind of story or narrative to try to explain things that have happened before and answer questions about us and existence. A lot of stories revolve around the idea of creation, that there are heroes in religion, that there are people like the devil or tricksters that try to manipulate. And then, of course, stories about the end of the world, like what happens when the world it ends and what causes the end of the world. Another thing that every religion has is core beliefs. Islam, Judaism, and Christianity all have core beliefs. We'll be looking at them more later on. This is usually done through written teachings by the Torah or the Bible or the Quran. Also, accepted truths that each religion believes, tenets about, like, these are the pillars of who we are, and we accept them as real and truthful. And then core beliefs are often, there's all kinds of things about, like, what do we do with life and death, or how should you live life, and what should your death end up uh, being the end progress of. And then guidance about what is moral, what is right, and what is wrong. Every faith has rituals that are part of the practices that they do regularly. They're like reoccurring ceremonies or events. A lot of them have to do with the life cycle of a person, their birth, when you come of age to be an adult, marriage, death. These are kind of rituals that every religion has. You have the holy sacraments if you're a part of Christianity. Um, you have prayer, which could be regular or less common. Feasts and fairs and that kind of thing are also part of rituals, and of course a pilgrimage that you go to like one of the holiest sites in all that religion one time in your life. This is not uncommon with religions either. Each religion has some kind of specialists that there is a hierarchy depending on where you are. Some of the hierarchies, the specialists, aren't that much more special. A lot of Protestant Christian faiths are like that. Some have definite where there are people that are closer to God. Um, in faith, usually there is a prophet, and a prophet isn't just like the Pope is not a prophet. A prophet is somebody who has directly communicated with God, and God has told that prophet what to do going forward. So that's the top of the chain. In the Catholic Church, you have priests, which are the spiritual leaders of which, by the way, the Pope is the top priest of the Catholic Church. A pastor is usually a spiritual leader of a Christian Protestant organization. If you are a spiritual leader of Muslims, you are considered an imam. And then when you are a spiritual leader of Jews, you are considered a rabbi. And these people are more specialized through a variety of reasons, whether it's connection to God or education, learning about the ins and outs of the religion. Places of worship, of course, you can worship in a closet, and if you're in China, you may actually have to do that. So places of worship are more and less important based on the religion, but you don't need a place of worship to be faithful to God. In Christianity, those names are usually churches, cathedrals, chapels, and temples. In Islam, mosques are the places of general worship. And in Judaism, the most common one is a synagogue, but you also see temples in Judaism as well, but they are less common. Of course, in Christianity, things like churches and chapels are actually more common. Finally, the symbols of religion, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. You have the crescent for Islam. For Christianity, you have the cross. For Judaism, you have the Star of David. So you have the different elements of religion. The and we're going to be studying mainly the what are called Abrahamic monotheistic faiths, that being Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Uh, we're going to be understanding the core beliefs and the details. So make sure you open your mind and get prepared for an interesting conversation about uh, some of the most important values in all of world history.